Now, a number of the new cases recorded so far have presented unfamiliar symptoms, including waist pains, and there have been sudden deaths without any underlying health problems. The development is prompting fears Ghana could be harboring new strains of the virus. If so, how come, and which of the strains is that? Well, President Akufo-Addo on this subject.
When I delivered update number 21 some 2 weeks ago, I urged all of us to continue adhering to the enhanced hygiene and mask-wearing protocols that have served us well and which led us to the situation where we were witnessing a gradual decline in the number of active cases. However, since that time, we have seen an upsurge in the number of active cases, from a little over 900 to 1,924. Our COVID-19 treatment centers have gone from having 0 patients to now being 4 because of the upsurge in infections. Particularly worrying is the fact that the Ghana Health Service is recording on the average 200 new cases of COVID infections daily. The number of patients requiring hospitalization and intensive care is rising. The number of severe cases, which stood at 18 a week ago, has increased sharply to 120. 2 weeks ago, there was no critical case. We now have 33 in our treatment facilities. Again, according to statistics from the Ghana Health Service, the considerable number of persons who are severely ill are surprisingly relatively youthful persons with no previous underlying health conditions. The number of confirmed deaths has increased sadly from 338 persons to 352 within the period. Recent genomic sequencing undertaken by our scientists have established that some arriving passengers tested positive for new variants of COVID-19. These passengers have all been isolated. Furthermore, work is ongoing to determine the presence and extent of spread of the new variants in the general population.
Well, let's get some more education on the issue about new variants and the nature of symptoms they present. Dr. Yabediako is an immunologist at the West Africa Center for Cell Biology and Infectious Pathogens. He joins us live with more. Thank you so much for your time. Doc, the last time we spoke, we were hoping that our next conversation will be focusing on some positive news in our fight against coronavirus, but unfortunately, it's not as we had wished. But let's focus on the issue now. The president talks about new variants that have been discovered at testing points at the Kotoka International Airport. Are you able to tell us what these variants are?
Yes. So thank you, Bernice. Good morning. So yes, the president described new variants, and I think it's important to make the point that, as has been said, these viruses are capable of mutating. And so a number of variants have been reported. However, of particular interest lately have been variants that was identified in the United Kingdom and another variant identified in South Africa, both of which have been demonstrated to be much more transmissible than the previous versions of the virus. So basically, the virus has mutated and is now able to transmit much better than before. And so the concern, as I'm sure your viewers are aware, the situation in the UK is quite concerning, and it's mostly revolving around the emergence of this new variant. So there was a lot of interest to see whether or not this variant was in Ghana. And so the government has been working hard together with us at the University of Ghana and indeed at a few other institutions around the country with sequencing capacity to try to detect these new variants. And so what the president was referring to is evidence, data that we have now that demonstrates that a number of passengers who tested positive at the airport. When we sequenced the virus that was isolated from these people, we were able to identify both the UK and the South African variant in a number of passengers.
Doc, you speak about mutation. How does this happen and why does it happen?
So it's a natural process. The virus is constantly, viruses like this have a very high mutational rate. The reason why is the virus is actively trying to evade the immune system. And so in order for the virus to survive in the long run, it has to mutate in order to be able to avoid the body's defenses. So thankfully, this virus mutates relatively slower than other viruses, but it does mutate. And so that is why, I think for a long time, there has been a call to continue to sequence the virus, because simply detecting the presence of the virus doesn't necessarily tell you exactly what the virus looks like. So that is the reason for the work that we've been doing to try to sequence the virus that is found in Ghana so that we can understand what it really looks like. And for instance, how, the mutations can also affect how well a potential vaccine would work. Thankfully, all indications are that currently, even these new variants would still be covered by the current vaccine. But that is also a concern.
Yeah, and I'm sure that will bring a lot of relief to people, because I was just going to come to that later on in the interview about how the vaccines that have been approved will deal with these new variants we are discovering. But Doc, there's an interesting development across social media, hearing from people who've recently tested positive. It appears they present different symptoms. I remember in your research work where you established that 1 million people in Accra alone had been exposed to the virus, you mentioned 5 strains of the coronavirus at that time in Ghana. Now we are learning of these 2 strains which we've detected at our testing centers at the airports. Doc, do the different variants determine how people feel or react based on the symptoms we are getting now?
So for now, so far, all the variants, and this is not just in Ghana, all the variants that have so far been detected globally, none have been demonstrated to cause more severe disease. So it appears that, COVID, depending on who you are, in different people presents different. But so far, there is no evidence of a particular variant that causes more severe disease. Having said that, as I said, these 2 variants that have been identified recently, and that unfortunately we now have at least found at the airport, these have been shown to be more highly transmissible. So what that means is they are transmitted from person to person much more easily than the previous variant. So while they may not cause an individual to be more severely sick than the COVID the variants that were circulating previously, the number of people that a single infected person can infect if they have this new variant is significantly more. And so that means that, if in a household you had 1 infected person in the past, they may not, they will probably not infect that many people in the same house. But with this highly transmissible variant, the chances of more people in the household being infected is raised. The same for public transportation or in an office or in a crowded area. Now, if one person has that new variant, the likelihood of multiple people in their surroundings being infected is significantly increased. In fact, the UK variant is 70% more transmissible than the quote-unquote original strain.
So this has nothing to do with how far you're standing off from someone, because there have been theories about people standing farther and, maybe double masking to prevent the new variants. But scientifically, it's not about that.
Well, I mean, scientifically, we are yet to fully understand what makes this virus more transmissible.
Okay.
But I would say that, yes, social distancing, yes, the virus may not necessarily travel further, although it may persist longer. We don't yet know why it is more transmissible. But certainly, the time required to become infected is probably less. So what I mean by that is if you are in contact with somebody who is infected with the older variant, maybe if you were there for 5 or 10 minutes, perhaps you would not be infected. With the new variant, that time is probably shorter. So whether wearing double masking, I think one mask typically, once again, masking only really works when everybody is masking up. Because when you wear a mask, you're actually protecting those around you, not so much yourself. You require those around you to also wear masks to in turn protect you. So I think with masks, as much as we are being asked to wear them, without full compliance, it can actually, it can cause significant issues. So we need everybody. I think that's why the president in his address was stressing that mask wearing is mandatory. And that is because if you wear a mask, but your neighbor who is close to you does not wear a mask, you are actually not protected. And so I think we need to be sort of encouraging people around us to also wear masks. If you get into a car and the driver is not wearing a mask, get out of the car unless he's willing to wear a mask. We have to realize that just wearing a mask ourselves, it does not protect us unless the other people are also wearing.
In other words, those who refuse to wear masks are being selfish because they are being protected and they aren't protecting other people. All right.
Precisely.
Doc, we heard the president talk about relatively younger population being affected in recent times. And for many parents whose children are going back to school, this is a source of worry. Do we know, since we are yet to determine even if these new variants are in our communities, do we know how children have reacted to the new variants in other countries like the UK and South Africa?
I think the research is still ongoing, but it does appear as though the newer variants do affect children a little bit more than previously. Children still seem to do much better than adults when it comes to this virus, and obviously the older you are, the more susceptible you are to the serious sort of symptoms and potential side effects of the virus. But as you said in your report, as the president himself said, the idea that COVID only affects people who are of a particular age or who have underlying conditions is currently being challenged, because in Ghana now we are seeing relatively young and healthy people unfortunately also succumbing to the severe symptoms. So it appears as though there's a little, as the president said, the severity of COVID in Ghana has increased. Whether this is entirely due to the new variant is unclear at this point, but there is certainly cause for significant concern, because we are seeing many, many more people with severe symptoms. Our isolation centers, our ICUs are filling up, and we didn't see that before. So it could simply reflect a much higher burden of disease with the highly transmissible variant. Potentially more people than ever before are infected, and even though a large number still remain asymptomatic, a small proportion of a very big number is still a large number of people. So if perhaps the severely sick people are still maybe 2%, 2% of 100 people is 2% of 10,000 is 200. So you can see how, as the burden of disease increases, the absolute numbers of people who are severely ill and who unfortunately perhaps may die is going to be much higher. Once again, this explains the government's call for all the protocols to be followed, because unless we prevent the spread and we minimize how many people are infected, we are likely to see these numbers significantly increase over the next few weeks.
How long will it take for sequencing to be done to determine if the new variants are within our communities?
So this sequencing effort, as I speak, sequencing is being done at the University of Ghana, at both WACBIP and Noguchi. We are also working with colleagues at UHAS and a couple of other places. So sequencing is ongoing. The government actually is very, very keen to get this work done, and so is providing resources to support this. So the government should be commended for the efforts in this area. I am hopeful that this is sort of a thing of finding a needle in a haystack. So we have to sequence enough samples to get a clear idea of whether we've looked hard enough or broadly enough to find it. Obviously, if we find it quickly, then that will be made. That knowledge will be made, or that data will be made available as soon as it comes out. So the sequencing is ongoing. We are collecting samples from multiple places within the community across the country to try to find whether or not these variants are in the community. And as soon as we have an indication on either way, it will be made known to the public.
So, Doc, for persons who may want to protect themselves beyond wearing a mask, we've been told about all these immune boosters, talk of the vitamin C's and all, and there's this latest trend of steaming. I just want to know, from the point of science, really, how does this help at all in the fight?
To be perfectly honest with you, I am of the opinion that steaming provides no benefit at all. Okay. In actual fact, there are a number of publications debunking steaming. Steaming helps, if you have mucus buildup, you have congestion, steaming can help with that. So that's why when you have a cold, when you have, when you have difficulty sort of breathing through your nose, steaming can help. But in terms of actually killing the virus, it will be... the virus is deep within your airway. If the steam actually got that far, it would actually burn you more than necessarily hurt the virus. So I really do not think steaming is a useful... I've seen publications of National Steaming Day. In my opinion, and I believe the opinion of a number of my colleagues, steaming provides no real benefit. To be honest, even these immune boosters, yes, they don't hurt to take, but the biggest way we can protect ourselves is not just by wearing a mask, but it's by socially distancing. And that means minimizing how we congregate, the kinds of places we go that are crowded, whether it is weddings, funerals, going to, restaurants. That is the only real way to prevent or to try to protect oneself, is to minimize contact with other people. That is why in the UK, they had to declare a second lockdown to try to keep people at home. So taking an immune booster or steaming and yet going to a funeral or a wedding where you are 100 other people, in my opinion, is not the right way to go. The best way to protect ourselves is to adhere to the protocol. You realize steaming is not in one of the national protocols, and that is there for a reason, because it doesn't really work. The protocols are wash your hands as much as you can, use hand sanitizers, wear a mask, and social distance, which means avoid being closer to anybody, than maybe about 6 feet. So that would involve minimizing our attendance at large gatherings, and if possible, working from home if our employers would allow.
It's a pleasure, Doc. Thank you so much for your time. Dr. Yabediako is an immunologist at the West Africa Center for Cell Biology and Infectious Pathogens. And we've been talking about the new variant of COVID-19. I hope you've learned something. Remember, I think the key thing to stress is that insist on other people around you wearing their masks. Because if you wear yours, you're protecting them, but they aren't protecting you. So you are more exposed in a mask with others around you who are not in their mask. But let's stay a while on COVID-19. Basic school children are in school today. But how are they responding to preventive protocols, i.e. washing of hands, sanitizing, wearing the face mask, social distancing? We've been out and about some schools, and here's what we gathered. Let's first hear from our Northern Region correspondent, Martina Bugri, who is reporting that some pupils who reported to school this morning said they had no face masks because they were waiting for government to supply. She joins us via Zoom with more. Hello, Martina.
Hi, Bennett.
Tell us more about what the school children told you.
If you can hear me. Yes, I visited several schools this morning, and what I have seen is that almost all the schools, the students didn't have a face mask, and there was no water for them to wash their hands. There was no sanitizer. And so you go through most of the schools, and it is the same story that you get. The things they need to use to ensure that they observe the protocols are all not there. Some areas in the northern region have been hit by some water shortage, and so this goes to hinder the campaign for them to do this hand washing. At the Fort Mataria Primary School, where I visited first, they have a poly tank, a big one, but there was no water. The containers were there, no water for them to wash their hands. And we are told in that school that they are yet to pick their hand sanitizers and those other things from the Ghana Education Service. And one of the teachers said because of the protocols, it might take a while for them to get it. At the Lamashegu cluster of schools, the story was same, and most of them were not wearing the face mask. And in some of the classrooms, we had 2 or 3 of them sitting in a desk without protection. And so it exposes almost everybody to the virus if any of them has it. Now, one of the teachers in that school told me that they were given just hand sanitizers and then the tissue. They are told that the face mask is yet to arrive in the region, and that when it comes, they would go for their own. But largely, I would say that most of the students are waiting on for government to provide. If government does not provide, it means that they would not have some to use. Because you ask them, did your parents know you were coming to school? They say yes. Did you tell them that you need a face mask? They said yes. What did they say? They don't have. And so their only hope is that government will provide. If that doesn't happen, the fight will definitely hit us now.
Martina, tell us about the situation in the northern region. Are masks readily available on sale, and how much do they cost?
Yes, we have masks. If you go through town, yes, you have masks on sale. It ranges between 3. The disposable ones go for 3 cedis, and then the reusable ones go for 5 cedis.
Did you say 3 cedis, Martina?
Yes, the disposable one goes for 3 cedis. Once you use and dispose of it, it's 3 cedis. So if you have 3 cedis, you can get one. But the one that you would need to reuse, that one will go for 5 cedis.
All right, Martina, we'll leave it here. You mentioned, though, that the teachers had reacted to what you discovered in the schools, but do you have a response from the directorate in the northern region?
We are yet to get that from them.
All right, Martina, we'll leave it here. But I've got Enima Do with me in studio. She's been visiting schools in Accra. And Enima, it's good I asked that question about how much masks cost.
Yeah.
Because right here in Accra, what you and I have,
is
which
1
is the
cedi.
disposable,
Yeah.
is 1 cedi.
Yes.
And so...
so 3 times the price.
Yeah, in the
yes.
northern region, I think it's... could be the reason why some parents there can't
60
afford.
cedis a month, Monday to Friday. So that's a lot. That's a lot of money.
Let's talk about the schools you visited in Accra.
Oh, gosh, Bernice. Okay, well, I mean, the morning started out hopeful because I started with Christ the King. So, you know, we got there and there were the thermometers, there were lots of Veronica buckets, you know, the children were, you know, spaced out, they were not rowdy, you know, it was looking good. I was hopeful. Class sizes, maybe about 10 in a class, you know, so lots of space in between. We spoke to the headmistress. She talked about the fact that the pictures are on the screen. She talked about the fact that they're actually running a shift system. So week 1, primary will come, half of primary will come, week 2, half. So it was, you know, on and off. So started out hopeful. Then we went to Morning Star, you know, pretty much the same situation. They just had new students coming in today. And you could see the Veronica buckets and, you know, the children were in masks and teachers were enforcing the protocols and all of that. Then the morning started to go downhill. And because we went to Osu Salem Basic 1. And that's when I had my first heart attack of the morning. So basically, they're actually not teaching today. They are cleaning. Very dusty, very dirty. The children most of them had, those are the pictures, they have as you can see, they're not wearing face masks. Okay. But the children were burning rubbish, cleaning gutters, you know, sweeping. Again, you can see that their face masks are under their chin for those who are wearing it. Just a really, not what you expect when you go into a school. They looked like laborers who had come to clean. The headmaster said, well, this is a situation. He was going to go for the PPEs today. That's the ones that the government was bringing in. So they didn't have anything. They didn't have thermometers yet. And they weren't giving out face masks. The most concerning thing about this school is the fact that some of the kids didn't have face masks and the fact that they weren't wearing them. So we moved to Osupasek, pretty much the same thing. They had taken stock of, you know, the buckets and the thermometers and stuff. And, you know, that age range was the age range that we were hopeful for, that, you know, that SHS students are more responsible. Yeah. So you feel like, okay, they'll wear their masks. They don't need too much discipline.
Coaching, yeah.
Yeah, wrong. a lot of them had it under their chin. And so we kept on yelling out, face masks, wear your face mask, wear your face mask, wear your face mask. They're not really wearing it. As soon as they see their teachers, they'll wear it. As soon as they see you, the media, they'll wear it. As soon as they walk away from you, you see them slip it down off their face. So I spoke to a couple of them. They're like, oh, we've heard the president say that, it's pretty bad. We've heard the president say that the cases are on the rise, but like we're all fine, life goes on. So for them, the severity of what is happening hasn't really hit home. And the headmaster said they haven't had like a reorientation. So apparently with the private schools, last Friday, a lot of them went to school for some sort of orientation. With these public schools, there's been no orientation. They've just come as they are, and they've been told to wear face masks, but they don't really have a clear understanding of what's going on. So there's a very sharp contrast between the private schools and the public schools, as we saw this morning. We're going to give them about 48 hours to settle in, because we also know that, today is the first day. So everybody's on point. See how it is in 48 hours. And hopefully it will be the same or better with the private schools, and hopefully the public schools would have finished their cleaning things that they're doing.
Do you get a sense, let's come back to the senior high school students, in your interaction with them, do you get a sense that they feel the virus is far from them?
Yes.
Or it won't affect me?
Yes. The thing is, the narrative when it comes to school children has been that children have very strong immunity, and so the virus has not been affecting them as much. So they know that. The second thing is that remember that we kept on telling our children, you will go back to school when the virus is gone. So for children who haven't had some sort of orientation, that actually we're living with the virus and it's getting worse, at the back of their minds, they believe that it's gone. So that's why we're back in school. You know what I mean? And apart from that, none of our friends have got it. None of our friends have died. So it's much ado about nothing really, or it's an adult thing. You get that impression that it's very far removed from them. And they're more interested, in their listening to music, they're standing by each other, they're huddling, they're gossiping. You know what it is with teenagers. So it's definitely very, very scary on that level. Very, very, very scary. And the headmaster did say he's going to have to keep a firm eye on them, continue to shout at them and say, don't do this. And he said a lot of them are coming from homes where their parents are not educated.
Okay.
So they don't really have anybody, pushing on them that this is what is happening. So it becomes a school's responsibility. And mind you, the public schools are not like the private schools, so they don't have like these extra assistants that have come into the Christ the Kings and the Morning Stars who are going to be monitoring. So it's really just your one teacher, 40 or 35 children in a classroom. And Ben, there's also the spacing. Because when we went to Christ the King, for example, they're running a shift system. Prosecco was expecting 1,500 students in school today. They've gone from having 40 in a classroom to 35. That's as much space as they can manage. Do you get what I mean? So it's tough. It's a little bit scary.
Well, we just need to pay more attention to the children, because as we just heard Dr. Yao-Bediako say, studies in countries where the new strains have been detected appear to have children coming in more with COVID than with the earlier strains. So hopefully we'll get the children to comply. But did you spot any parents?
Yes.
Did they share any
we
concerns?
spoke to a lot of the parents. They seemed okay. And to be fair, we spoke to the parents at the private schools, because with the public schools, well, they were walking to school and coming in churches and all of that. The private school parents, they've paid a load of school fees, so they know that measures have been put in place for their children.
I'll come back to you, Nima. Let's head to the central region now. Correspondent Richard Kojo-Nyako reports that a number of pupils he's spotted this morning are not in masks. He joins us live with more. Hello, Richard. What reasons do these children give for not wearing their masks?
Well, I'm in one of the schools currently, and out of about 10 pupils you will meet, you can only find one person wearing the face mask. It's a basic school. The explanation is that government is yet to supply the PPEs to the various basic schools and even the senior high schools. And so the parents say they cannot be faulted. They do not have money to buy these things on top of caring for the children as well. One interesting...
Richard, before you continue, we've just lost your video feed. Can you just turn it on so we can see you and what you're also going to describe to us later? All right, so whilst we wait for him to fix that, Ivy Setterji is joining us from the Volta region via phone. Ivy, what's the situation like in the schools you visited?
The situation is same in I am currently in the Anoga district, precisely Anoga, where most of the public schools, students or school children are not in their nose mask. And teachers are trying very hard to ask them to go back to their houses for the nose mask before they come in. And you see teachers also standing by the Veronica bucket to make sure that any of the students or children who comes into the compound washes their hands, sanitize before they go inside. But for what we saw, it will be very, very difficult for teachers to be able to control these school children, especially those in the basic and the lower primary, to use the nose mask and also observe the protocols. So this is what is happening. I just left the Catholic school in Anoga, the EP school. I'm going to some of the private schools to check what is happening. But some of the private schools, because the number is not so great, some of them are also trying to make sure that their students are adhering to the protocols. You see some of the students in nose mask. But what we are seeing, it is very difficult for teachers to make sure that these students observe the protocols, especially with the wearing of the face mask and then using of the hand sanitizer. I am going to the education director now to speak with her. We understand that yesterday she went around the churches educating parents to make sure that they provide for their children or they teach them on what to do when they come to school. So I'm going to the education director at the assembly to ask her what she's doing about the current situation where most of the students are not able to wear the
all right, Ivy Setterji there from the Volta region. Let's head to the central region now. Richard Kojunyako is back. Richard, I was finding out from you what reasons the school children were given for not wearing their masks. Hello, Richard?
Yes, Benis.
Great, I can hear you now.
So simple. The students say they do not have money to buy the face masks for them, and so they cannot also afford to stay at home. And then government is also yet to supply these face masks to the various basic schools in the central region. A short while ago, what just happened was that at Elmina, Bright Hill Academy at Elmina, the school has shut down. So over 60 school people's fate are hanging in the balance because the proprietor is alleged to have said that, well, he cannot follow the protocols and he can no longer operate the school anymore. So the books of the pupils have been distributed to them. The parents come, and then the parents are not happy with how they have been treated because there was no prior information to the parents. There were no consultative meetings that were held by the school authorities. They only came, and then the proprietor is alleged to have said that, well, he can no longer operate the school because he cannot follow the protocols. Things are very hard. He cannot simply follow the protocols.
Sorry, Kojo, that is a private school, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. So I have with me the Central Regional Chairman of the Ghana National Association of Teachers to throw more light on what really the current situation is. Reverend Isaac Owusu, good morning.
Yeah, good morning, Richard.
Also, what can you tell us? You also been touring the schools in the region. What have you found?
Yes, a classical example is what we are seeing in the Anglican Basic School at where we are standing currently. Yeah, teachers are in school, the students and as well as the pupils are in school. But it is unfortunate, those of us who find ourselves at the public basic schools and then the SHS, you could see that most parents did not help much as schools are resumed today. They think that once the government said schools should reopen and everything is set, most parents didn't even bother to make provision of the PPEs for their kids. And you can see that about 10 students, only 1 or 2 that are using the PPEs. And I think it is not good for us as a country. Teachers are ready to work. But we won't know, listening to the president yesterday and the rate at which the president spoke yesterday, all of us were at alarm. So thinking that today, everything will be ready and will be set. And it is unfortunate that government or the GES and the Ministry of Education is yet to honor. It's part of making provision of the PPEs to our schools. So that is why we found ourselves. It is very unfortunate.
Does it scare not the teachers who are also involved? Because the teachers, most of them I've seen, they are wearing their mask, but the students or the pupils are not wearing. Does it scare you?
Yes, because everybody stands at risk. So if I put on my nose mask and then my student or people is not putting on the nose mask, you see that the kids are playing. Right now they are playing. So if per chance a child gets infected and then it infects the teacher will carry it to the house and give it to the family. So I think we are all scared. We are all scared.
So going forward, what would you advise to be done?
What we'll advise is that we are pleading with the power that be to, with immediate effect, make the PPEs available. And then we're also pleading with the parents to at least make sure that before they allow their ward to go to school, they should give them the needed and the basic PPEs so that all of us will protect ourselves from these deadly diseases, my brother.
Well, so Benes, you had Reverend Dr. Isaac Owusu, and he is the regional chairman of the Ghana National Association of Teachers. He sounds obviously frustrated that the PPEs that are expected to be...
Too bad we lost... Richard, can you hear me? Well, too bad we lost him. I was just about to find out how much a mask costs in the central region, because we're just learning that in the northern region, for a disposable mask like what I've got on, is 3 cedis, 3 times the price what is sold here in Accra. Maybe not justifiable, but could it be a reason why parents aren't able to give their children the mask they need? Well, the National Schools Inspectorate Authority has told JoyNews, among measures to deal with any school cases or cases that are recorded in school, every school has been attached to a nearby health center for any emergency. The Inspector General, Dr. Hilda Mpedu, spoke to Mama Viewusu Abwaje earlier on the AM show.
I'm quite confident that the Ghana Health Service is on top of what they are doing. Yesterday, on JoyNews, Dr. Kuma Abwaje was on there, and he was stating the measures they put in place to ensure rapid testing, to ensure rapid contact tracing. Now, every school has been mapped to a health facility. And actually, for private schools, I engaged the owners of proprietors of private schools last week, and I walked them through the process of ensuring that your school is mapped to the Municipal Health Directorate and the Disease Control Office in that Health Directorate. So there's a system in place at Ghana Health Service to support every school should there be an outbreak or should there be a suspicion of a case in the school. So with that, I have confidence that Ghana Health Service will help us alleviate any fears or any doubts in if the unfortunate happens, what will happen. Ghana Health Service takes over the case, it becomes a national case, and they will handle it to the end. So I think with that, I'm quite confident that we have a process in place.
Well, there you have it. The conversation will continue. As we are learning today, a lot of school children went to school without masks. Some of them saying they were waiting for what government said it will provide. And others saying their parents can't afford the mask. There's quite an interesting situation that is developing. But we'll see how government responds to this particular situation and how that will also be granted. But let's go back to the Inspectorate Authority, because the Director General also says the authority will shut down schools that fail to comply with preventive protocols.
We, as an inspectorate, will go around schools at random and ensure we'll be embarking on several monitoring and evaluation to ensure compliance of the protocols. So across the country, I mean. So in terms of will schools go by the guidelines, we advise proprietors that it is in the best interest of the population, not just that school, not just the proprietor, not just the learners in that school, but all of us. We should be rather keepers, because the disease doesn't know anyone. So we'll advise them to go by the protocols. But we also do our job of compliance by going around the schools and ensuring that the protocols are being followed. And schools that are found to be in violation of the protocols will be penalized. The president said that yesterday in his speech, that we will not spare anyone who's just abandoning the protocols and not going by.
But practically, what does that mean?
Practically, if you're a school and you are not going by the protocols and exposing children unnecessarily, we'll let you shut down.
Well, for a proprietor in the central region, he's decided to go ahead of the Inspector's Authority and shut his school down himself. He says, look, I can't afford this, and I'm not going to put anybody's child at risk, so let me just end it here. But Anima is still with me in the studio. Quickly, in wrapping up this conversation, a lot of the children who aren't in Marseille, our parents can't afford it. They're waiting for government, but Anima really...
Gosh, you know, it's a double-edged sword.
Exactly.
Because on one hand, you understand the parents, you know, some of them don't have money to even feed their children. I remember that one issue that we dealt with when the kids were home was that they didn't have access to the school feeding program, so they were not even able to get 3 meals a day. So you can imagine that there's some parents who cannot afford to spend that much money to buy masks. It's the reality of the situation. But on the other hand, the government has done a lot. You know, they're providing thermometers, they're providing Veronica buckets, they have provided some face masks. They're also giving you free education, they're providing your books and stuff. So sometimes it's as simple as, you know, taking that your old kaba and slit, cutting off some of the material, you know, putting another material underneath, you know, getting some ties, cutting in the form ties, stitching it together and making a face mask for your child. I think that at least if we can also commit to doing our part in whichever way we can, the objective is to keep our children safe. And so this morning we're encouraging, you know, if you're listening to us and you don't have money or you can't afford to, make a face mask yourself. You know, just make sure your child's face, their nose is covered and their mouth is covered, you know, because it will cost you much more if they fall sick.
I like the bit of creativity you throw in there, because honestly, I didn't address my mind to the fact that people could actually create their own mask.
Yes, you can.
And if you're going to do a cloth mask, don't forget that you need at least 2 layers of the
Yeah.
cloth, not one, because that's quite porous and you may not be able to protect yourself and other people that much. But thank you so much, Anima.
You're welcome, Bernice.
And here on Joy News, we'll still be doing the checks. We'll be asking government the questions and ensuring that the promises they've also made are fulfilled. But coming up shortly on business, Darryl Kwao will be bringing us news on our debt pressure. Do stay for details.
Hi, good morning. Welcome to Business. My name is Darryl Kwao. Ghana's economy could come under some pressure from rising debt, which is projected to hit about 80% of gross domestic product by the end of this year. That's a disclosure from ratings agency Moody's 2021 Sub-Saharan Africa Outlook report. Charles Nixon Yabua has been going through the report and has more.
GDP ratio has already crossed the dreaded 70% mark, putting the country in the highly debt-distressed category and increasingly threatening the stability of the economy. According to Moody's, the country will be ranked second in sub-Saharan Africa with the greatest external vulnerability stress pressures. Despite a rebound in growth, the debt burden will rise further as Ghana's borrowing is extremely high compared to its peers on the continent. With domestic revenue mobilization expected to remain low, the repayment of loans will become a test case for the country. The governor of the Bank of Ghana has already called for tougher measures to improve the fiscal economy, that is widening the tax net to raise enough revenue and at the same time exhibit prudence in spending as well as reducing the appetite for borrowing. Moody's also said currency depreciation will add to the cost of debt loads and lower debt affordability. More than 50% of Ghana's debt is held by external investors. But as borrowing requirements rise amid wider financing gap and upcoming maturities, some market watchers want the country to consider taking advantage of the debt service suspension initiative to get modest liquidity relief. With the DSSI, bilateral loans with maturities that fall due within the program
will have a repayment period of 5 years. As of September last year, Ghana's debt has reached a little over 273 billion cedis.
Now, some of the big oil marketing companies have started adjusting prices of various petroleum products at the pumps. A litre of diesel and petrol is now selling at more than 5 cedis. George Rafi has details.
Checks show that the review by some of these big oil marketing companies have even gone beyond the projected 3% as forecasted by Joy Business last week. Total, as of Sunday morning, was selling a litre of diesel and petrol at 5 Ghana cedis 10 pesos. This should mean that a gallon should be sold at around 22 Ghana cedis 95 pesos. Total Oil's price increment may be seen as very crucial to the industry, or call it a market mover. And this because despite having over 100 oil marketing companies in the country, Total, Gold and Shell may be commanding more than 50% of the market share. Therefore, any move by these firms could see the other players follow. Joy Business engagement with some of the other players showed that they will move quickly to adjust if the big players review their prices. So I expect the rest of the players to start adjusting their prices in the coming days, even though the margin of increment may differ. The review in prices could in the coming days possibly push for talks between transport operators and government for an increase in fares. It could also lead to an increase in prices of goods and the cost of living, and maybe end up with general price levels of services also going up.
And that's all in business. There's sports coming up after this break.